This is Spirit Gym. Today, Paul welcomes Dr. Enolia Foti to the podcast. Enolia is currently based in Africa and is a respected grandmother, elder, and practitioner of energy medicine, as well as a speaker and author of 4 books. Committed to youth advocacy, women empowerment, and contribution to the continent of Africa, she has been honored with an honorary doctorate in International Peace Ambassadorship from the United Nations and an Ambassadorship for Human Rights from the World Assembly for Peace. Thank you for listening to this podcast, which would not be possible without you, our subscribers, and also our premier sponsors, Organifi, Bioptimizers, Paleo Valley, and Wild Pastures. The sponsors' special offers and discounts are mentioned throughout this episode, or you can visit the show notes page at paulchek.com/podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek. Today, I have an amazing guest, Dr. Enolia, world shaman, modern-day medicine woman. I learned about Enolia from my wife, Angie Chek, who some of you have probably heard several times on my podcast, who is a highly skilled shaman and a practitioner of biogeometry and much, much more. And she was super excited when she met Enolia. She came home and she talked to me for a long time about all the great conversations they had and just how powerful Enolia's spirit was. And immediately I had an intuitive insight. I got to get Enolia on the podcast. So we've met and I'm excited for what she has to share with you today. And I'm also excited that we're going to offer a 2-day workshop with Enolia here at the Rainbow House. She's going to come all the way from Africa to give us a beautiful, amazing experience. So I'm going to let Enolia tell you a little bit about that and say hello as part of our intro. And I wanted you to know the music in the background is an African tradition. And Enolia says everywhere you go in Africa, you hear music unless you're way out in the countryside. So she wanted to give us the African experience today. So welcome, Enolia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's wonderful to be here. And to share with you a little bit about the 2-day workshop, we are going to do drum making in ceremony the indigenous way. As a initiated Ojibwe grandmother, I will be sharing how to do and create your drum, but we're not creating an instrument. We're creating medicine that is an extension of ourselves. So we will be creating a drum, and we'll be going through a naming ceremony, and then we'll learn how to play the drum in a shamanic way. And then in the end, we're going to be honoring California. A lot of healing needs to take place in California. And
amen to that.
It is exciting to know that you gave us the opportunity to be able to do some healing on the land. So I'm really excited to come, and I'm really excited to honor the Earth Mother in California.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to hear that. California is, she's not what she used to be. I'm a native Californian, and I've watched my homeland deteriorate from a place of tremendous creativity and opportunity into something I don't even recognize. And I'm just glad that you're including that, and I will be 100% present to participate in that myself, because California is such a beautiful, beautiful place, and anything we can do collectively to help bring her spirit back into the earth is very important. So thank you for that offer. I think that's beautiful. Enolia, I titled our podcast Shamanism for Today because I think just as we're having a third psychedelic wave of revival, we're having a real shamanic revival. I've never seen so many people in my life going to workshops on shamanism, taking certification courses from people like Alberto Villoldo. And Angie went through Michael Harner's 3-year program, and I know that school's still running strong. So I think that there's a call from Mother Earth to bring us back into harmony with the planet and the elements. Before we get into your background and more about you, I wondered if you could share your thoughts on what you feel about the shamanic revival that's going on?
I think that we're waking up. And in waking up, what happens is that you're like, I feel called to do something, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. And I remember the time that I was called, and it's like, okay, I want to do something. I want to do something that's in balance with nature. I want to do something that honors my heart. But what is it that I do? And then you're voracious for learning. And
Yes.
you're looking for a teacher. And the teachers have been ready. And so now it's time for the students to come. And we're
Yes.
here. And we're here to teach. So, yeah.
Well, we'll get a lot more into shamanism as we go, and I think it'll be quite obvious as to why this is so important. But to begin, I would really love to hear more about your journey. You're a world shaman and a modern day medicine, medicine woman. And when we met, I found your journey really amazing. So maybe you can introduce the whole podcast by letting us know how you became the woman you are today and what your living philosophy is.
Wow, that was and is still a journey that's taking place, but it started back in upstate New York. And I was working for a corporation. And while I was working in the corporation, they were going through downsizing. And anyone who's experienced downsizing knows the environment is toxic. You're feeling like you're at your low and you're having that moment. And I had that precipice, that moment that said, I'm not happy. What am I doing here? Why am I here? There's got to be another way to live. There has to be another way to live. This can't be all that it is, where you're suffering. And when I say suffering, when you are afraid for your job, when you're afraid for your standard of living to be compromised, and you're looking for a way that says there's got to be an outlet to this. I can't just go to work day by day and be in fear. What is it? And there was this calling in my heart to find another way to be. And so I had always loved other cultures, and I decided that I had to honor my own. I wanted to learn about being African, and I knew that I had a percentage of Native American. And so there I am in upstate New York, and I could not find a way to connect with the African roots that I was in. So I decided I was going to connect with the Native roots that are a part of my heritage. I am a percentage of Cherokee as well as a percentage of African, and I'll get to what that is in a little bit down in my story. But as I started exploring certain contingency or a certain area was going on in terms of Native Americans, and it was the 13 indigenous grandmothers. These were grandmothers, and a grandmother is an affectionate term for medicine women. These were medicine women from all over the world coming together. And their story was that they are the prophecy coming together, sharing knowledge that has never been shared before, and that the time was now to embrace everyone. And so I felt called, and I remember going in Rhinebeck, New York, to the Omega Center to see them. And when I saw these women, I saw powerful women. These women, I remember a grandmother from Nepal, 4'2". And I remember that I had studied enough to realize that she was calling the names of God.
Mm.
And what I felt, I was at least 100 feet away from her. I could feel in my belly as if she was right next to me. And I'm like,
Wow.
Okay, I need to know what's going on. I need to learn. I need to engage. I have to get a teacher before I leave here. And I remember going through that, and how they had set up the conference is that each grandmother showed their way of honoring Creator, of honoring Spirit, and how to celebrate Spirit. And so every one of them, I felt something stir and move within me. And I remember that they had all gathered at one location, and Grandmother Margaret And she was, I believe, of the Lakota. But Grandmother Margaret pointed out this woman in the audience that was her student, but was a grandmother. And this woman was in her buckskin dress holding a serpent staff. And I looked at her and I'm like, that's her. That's the woman I'm going to learn from. And I didn't know what to ask her. I didn't know what to do or how to approach, a woman of this stature or of the standing. And I remember saying, okay, Creator, I don't know what to do, but I'm just going to go for it. And I remember waiting and spying her when she walked out, finding the nerve within me to walk up to her and say, Grandmother, I just heard your introduction. My name is Enolia. I really want to learn from you. And she looks at me and she goes, well, my girl, what is it that you want to learn? And I was like, I don't even know what to call it. So I said, what about poultices and herbalism or anything? And she looks at me and she goes, well, my girl, if you're really serious about this, come up and see me sometime. And she hands me this card. And it's a picture of her holding her serpent staff in a white buckskin dress. And she looks like a goddess. She looks like a white calf buffalo woman. She just looks powerful. And so I said, are you sure? Because I will call. And she said, yes, I'm sure. I wouldn't have extended it to you if I wasn't sure. And so it took me 2 months later, but 2 months later, I was driving 15 hours straight north into Canada territories to Warncliffe, New York, through Serpent River to visit Grandmother Isabel Mawasagi, who would then become my teacher. And full circle in the end, initiate me as a grandmother. And I remember meeting her that weekend, and we got along and it was wonderful. We just felt like I knew her. I felt like she was somebody that was there that I've known my whole life. And I had just met this woman. And then she shared with me that she had actually saw me before I had approached her and had recognized what I was doing. And it was funny because when I was in Omega, I had actually brought a spinning wheel and I was spinning yarn because I was so addicted to spinning, and it was my comfort zone. And she saw me and she was like, not too many people know how to do that the old ways. And she shared with me that she had recognized that I was spinning. So we got to know one another, and she said, okay, if you're really serious about being taught, this is what I want you to do. You can help me organize a retreat, but I want you to bring women to that retreat. If you bring women to that retreat, I will teach you. I will work with you. And the retreat was the following summer. I want you to know that I brought 22 women to that retreat because I was going to get taught. And a year later, I get to go a week before the retreat and engage and help and set up. And that was when I really started understanding who Grandmother Isabel Mawasagi was. She was a medicine woman. She was the leader among her community. They had selected her among their community to represent all of their issues, all of their moral and all of their physical wants from an elder. And when someone needed to be prayed for, they went to Grandmother Isabel. When they had a death in the family, they went to Grandmother Isabel. When they needed moral support or they just felt like their life was falling apart, they went to Grandmother Isabel. And then not only was she a grandmother, but eventually I realized that she was a grandmother of grandmothers, that the grandmothers went to her. So here I am, that prelude to the week before the retreat, and things are unfolding. And one of the moments that happened is that her staff broke. And that was devastating. That was her medicine. She had had that staff. It was specially made for her. She had had it for, I don't know, over 20, 30 years. And we did a ceremony, and it was the first time I ever participated in a ceremony. And there were two other women that were there ahead of time along with myself. One was Ellie, and the other one was Louise. And they were indigenous. They were Ojibwe. Ellie was Ojibwe, and Louise is Métis. So they understood the indigenous ways. I didn't. Here I am. I'm this corporate woman coming to like explore. Who am I, to actually be sitting here? And I remember being on the Serpent River land and going to Serpent River. And Grandmother Isabel had tears in her eyes when we drove up. And she sat in the car a long time and none of us said a word. I just took my cues, like watching the other women. And then she went and she stood at this cornerstone as the river kind of turned the corner, and it was running and it was powerful. And she sat there silently with tears in her eyes, and we waited in the back. And then we walked up, and I remember I had made this shawl because I'm a spinner, I'm a weaver, and I had made this shawl and I placed it on her shoulders. And the other two women sat next to her. And I sat next to them. She got up, and there were the three of us, and she left her staff, the two pieces, there with us. I remember holding the staff with the other two women. We raised it up. We brought it down. The women spoke words over it and then looked at me. I was able to say a prayer over it. And then we released it back to Serpent River. And we watched it wash away. That was such a powerful moment to me, to be able to honor something and release it on her behalf. And to know that I got to participate in that, and that she felt that, for me, it was like, wow, I was worthy. I could do it. I could be there. I could participate in it. And I also knew that something transcended just doing it. Mm. The energy around it was more than just us placing a staff that was broken in the river. We were placing medicine. We were placing energy. We were giving Mother Earth back that which she brought forward to be used, because its time had come to give back, and then letting it go. And that how hard it had to be for her to let go, because I know she healed with that in many different ways that I didn't understand yet at that time. So we all gathered around the car, and we went back, and we stopped to get something to eat. And while we were eating, this woman comes up and she goes, "Grandmother Isabel?" And she says, "Yes, my dear." And then she breaks the cigarette and she opens the tobacco, and she takes the tobacco out of the cigarette and she places it in Grandmother's hand. And she said, "Will you please say a prayer for my father? He's dying." And Grandmother says, "Yes, my dear, no problem." She asks her a few questions. Girl answers, and then she just disappears. And then I was thinking, my God, the responsibility that it would take to just like be able to do these prayers. And so Grandmother finishes her meal. She tucks the tobacco away. She puts it in a napkin, finishes her meal. We go back to Warrenclyffe, to her home. And she goes, "My girl, would you like to help me with this?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure." And she shows me for the first time how to pray with the tobacco, and then how to release the tobacco, and how that woman's prayers and everything that that woman had said, it was like how she placed this light in the energy through that tobacco, through her heart, and then released it. And that was the second time, or the second part. And I was like, there was such a peace within me.
Beautiful.
And I had really realized that, wow, there's a whole nother way of being here. So I'm going to fast forward to the retreat starts. And so, I was all excited about the retreat, and Ellie and I had worked hard with grandmother to put it together. And it was my first indigenous retreat. And, I'm coming from a corporate perspective. I can do an event, no big deal. And I'm like, Ellie, come on, it's time. We got to start. We got to go kick this off. And Ellie's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm like, well, what do you mean you're not going anywhere? She's like, I'm not going anywhere. She doesn't need me. I'm like, I don't understand. We put this together. Come on, we got to kick it off. She's like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I have to do this and this. And she just left. And I didn't understand. And I'm like, we did all this work. We got to kick it off. So I'm like, okay, she's not going to kick it off. I'll go. I'll do it. I'm used to kicking off events. And so I go, and everybody's standing there waiting. And I guess they were waiting for me and Ellie. And I said, Ellie wasn't coming, so I'm there. And so I said, okay, everybody, we have this great, plan for you. We have this agenda. We're going to do this, 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 and this. And, I'm talking, and I go on my diatribe for about 5 minutes. And then Sandy, which is grandmother Isabel's second, right, goes, hey, ladies and gentlemen, can we take a moment? Can we take a bathroom break real quick? And I'm like, okay, she wants to do that. Fine. So I actually go. I go in the house. I come back out, and she catches me coming out. And she goes, do you think you're leading this? And I'm like, excuse me, what? What? Do you think you are leading this? In all my days of attending retreats, I have never, ever seen a retreat open like this before. Do you think you're leading this? And then I realized what I had done. I had been so stuck in my corporate ways that I just took the lead. I never thought the fact that there's a grandmother, there's a way to lead. I was a participant. I was so automatic in my ways. And then the tears started coming down, and I'm like, no, I didn't want to lead. Oh my God, I insulted the very woman I wanted to learn from. No, I didn't want to lead. And she goes, you don't want to lead? I'm like, no, I called Ellie. Ellie didn't explain to me that grandmother Isabel takes the lead from here. I just thought that we were supposed to. She says, oh, so then there's no problem. Okay, you don't want to lead. Okay. She said, collect yourself and come on. And so I had tears coming down my eyes. I was a mess. I was like, it's over. She's not going to teach me. That's it, And so they waited for me. They weren't going to, she called me. Sandy called me over. Enolia, come on. And I'm like, okay. I'm coming. And I go, and I'm kind of, my head held down, my walk of shame for myself. And she whispers in my ear when I stand next to her, because I stand next to Sandy and everybody's in a circle. She whispers in my ear, hold your head up. And I looked at her. She said, hold your head up. And I hold my head up. And, grandmother Isabel's talking. And I'm looking at grandmother Isabel, and she motions with her hand for me to move from Sandy to her. And I'm looking, and I walk over to her, and she says all of the things that she says, and then she opens up with the 4 directions. And I had never seen that before. I had never participated with that before. And she holds me by her side. She grabs me by her arm, and she holds me tight to her. And she opens up the directions, and I feel it. I feel it all the way down through me. And I'm like, wow. And what I realized and what I learned at that moment was compassionate leadership. They did not belittle me. They did not throw in my face what I had done wrong. They did not make me feel ashamed by saying something. And in corporate, they would have done that. They would have tenfold. You did this, you did that, you did the other. None of it. And they showed me what compassionate leadership was, and that no one would have known that anything was wrong unless I had shared it. And that's why she told me to hold my head up high. They didn't go through a diatribe. Oh, Enolia did it wrong. We're going to correct it. They didn't do any of that. They just moved forward. That was such a huge lesson for me.
Yeah, it's a beautiful one.
Huge lesson. So I ended up having lessons all throughout that retreat, I want you to know, because I stuck my foot in my mouth multiple times as that corporate leader. And I actually wrote about all of this in my book, Finding My Sovereign Voice with My Grandmother Elder. And here it is, I remember I mentioned a woman named Louise, Métis, beautiful woman, strong, big woman, and big as compared to me, just strong, big woman. And, her having an altar and her showing us an altar. And I didn't know what an altar was at the time, and I was like, oh, this is really nice. And I had my crystals, and I was aware enough about my crystals, and they can call, and they're meaningful to me. And I was, so I decided I was going to put my crystals on her altar and leave them there and let them hang out there for a while. And I'm hanging out with my friend Karen during the retreat. And all of a sudden, Louise comes to me and she said, are these your crystals? And I said, yeah. She said, they were calling you. Did I give you permission to put them on my altar? And I'm looking, I'm like, oh crap, I did it again. Permission? I was supposed to ask permission. You do not touch anyone's altar, anything without asking permission. You ask permission for everything. And I was like, this was a woman I did not want to piss off. Okay. She was a woman. And she looked at me and I realized that I was like, I'm so sorry. She said, you don't ever leave an extension of you. They're crying for you. They did not want to be left. I wasn't in tune enough to know that I was leaving a part of myself. Wasn't in tune enough that I had imbued my energy into these crystals and they were an extension of me.
Yes, yeah, very much
and so they wanted to stay with me and they didn't want to be left in another energetic altar of somebody else's putting together. So that was another lesson that I learned. So the weekend and the week was filled with, it was a 10-day retreat and it was filled with lessons. And I'm going to share one other really, really, really important time that happened there too, was that we got to meditate with one of the original crystal skulls. And another grandmother Rose, had brought the crystal skull. And that was the first time that I had ever meditated with anything that had significant power. And I could feel it. She unveiled it. Nobody knew it was going to be there. We were all in circle and it was being presented that we're going to have a gift and this gift doesn't happen every time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? And then they unveiled the skull and the circle broke. Some people walked away. They couldn't deal with the energy. It was really wild to watch. And then some of us stayed and some people instantly started arguing.
Wow.
And some people were just quiet. I was quiet. And I'm kind of like watching all of this going, okay. But energy affects people in so many different ways. So we do this beautiful meditation, this beautiful, beautiful meditation. And it was entering into a cave. The crystal skull was there. We connect with the crystal skull, and then we just expand. And she brought me on a flight, or I call her she. I felt like it was a she. She brought me on a flight, and I saw this dirt, and then I saw these people walking, and they were in camo. And it was red clay, and they were climbing over this hill, and they were in camel, and they were carrying armor. And I didn't know what that was. And then all of a sudden, she was calling us back, and boom, it was gone. It was gone. And I'm going to get back to that. So it was a powerful meditation, and it was a wonderful meditation. And I'll never forget, it was like an imprint in my mind of what took place during that time, how I felt, and how that energy revealed itself. And before I leave the retreat, I'm going to make you laugh one more time.
Okay.
Because the arrogant side of me, the egotistical, that corporate arrogance, decided that I was going to go in their barn. It was like a 200-year-old barn. And it was abandoned, but that's where grandmother did her teachings of all of us. She would bring us all in and we'd do the teachings. And it was dark and it was a full moon. And you could see the full moon through maybe some of the skin slats through this 200-year-old barn. It was a hay barn because they had these levels by which you could just stack and stack and stack and stack and stack. And it had to be at least 150 feet tall. It was really, really tall, really old. And I decided, well, I had meditated there during the day, and I decided I was going to come back at night and I was going to open the 4 directions. Because Grandmother Isabel, she held me aside, and I can mimic what she said. How hard could it be, right?
Yeah.
So I come back there at night, and I have my little candle, and I have my 4 crystals, and I lay them out in the directions. And then I kind of mimic what she says, and I open the directions, and I say, spirits, come, And then, well, wait a minute. I'm breathing, and I'm like, the breathing gets a little tighter, and I'm like, oh, is there something in the air here? And then the longer I stayed, the harder it was to breathe. And the longer I stayed, the harder it was to breathe. And inside of 2 minutes, I couldn't breathe. And I was like, it's like I'm being squeezed. And then I realized I called all the spirits in and they came. They were squeezing me. I couldn't breathe. I had called in something I couldn't handle. I had called in and opened something. Did I open a door? What the heck did I do? And I'm struggling, and I could barely walk, and I'm trying to get out of that barn, and it seemed like a mile away, and I'm walking, and I'm struggling, and I'm holding my neck, and I can't breathe. And I get out of the barn. I finally get to the entrance, and it seemed like a mile to get to the entrance, and I get to the entrance, and I could breathe, and I could breathe. And I'm taking these deep breaths. And then I decided, okay, I can breathe now. Let me go get the thing. And I walk in, and it's tight again, and I walk out. I had called all these energies in, and they crowded me out. They crowded me. I couldn't go back in that barn. And I had to call one of my friends again, and I had ego, and I had to admit that I had opened the directions, and they had to close it for me because I, again, did something I didn't understand at the time. But what all of this did, that time, and the reason I shared that time so closely to my heart is because that showed me that there was another way to be. That showed me there was another way to live. That showed me that I could change the course of my life. And when I walked off that farm, Warncliffe, and when I walked off the res, Serpent River, I was going to change my life. And that was the moment that I realized that I wanted to be a shaman.
That's great.
And so it's really strange because that was the beginning of a string of teachers. That was the beginning.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you, because I was just going to say, when we met, you told me about all the different teachers you've worked with, and there's so many more. So I'd love to hear maybe a summary of how you progressed in your evolution. And how many years ago was that you started with this story that you just told?
About 15 years ago. 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And what it was that from that moment, after Grandmother Isabel, I knew I wanted to be taught, but I didn't know by who. And then what ended up happening is that a string of teachers started coming through my life, and they were finding me. A family member who had always practiced Reiki, but she had practiced Reiki. She was in her 70s at a time when it wasn't accepted. And she introduced me to her teacher. And she was like, don't tell anyone else in the family that I do this. I don't want them to know. I don't want to go through that headache of their projections and judgments. And that's when I met Grandmother Shirley of the Lakota. And I did Vision Quest with Grandmother Shirley. And it was something that, it was powerful. Fasting for 4 days, 3 nights in the Appalachian Mountains with nothing but prayer ties around me. And really, really just aligning with nature. Really aligning with nature and really knowing that there were wild animals all around. Matter of fact, when I left that Vision Quest, there were bear tracks around me, but it never entered the prayer ties.
Wow.
So I studied with Grandmother Shirley, and then I met Grandfather Lynch Archuleta of the Yaqui Indians, and he took me in the desert, and we did desert intensives. And he taught me how to be one with the desert, how to read the desert, how to understand the fairy world, how to understand what's being said, how to communicate. Because I remember using what he taught me, getting lost in Joshua Tree one time. And it's no joke when you get lost in the desert. And having to find my way and having to ask nature to show me. And then knowing how to understand the signs when it does. I met Grandmother Maria Resaburu of the Apache and was taught with her. And then I actually did go through Alberto Villoldo's program because I wanted to learn from Grandmother Isabel, but she wanted me to co-locate with her for 2 years. And I couldn't uproot my family. My family wasn't willing to move. And so with Alberto's program, I could go, I could study, I could come back, I could put it to practical use. I could go, I could study, and put it to practical use. So it took me 2 years to get through his program. And that was pre-online stuff. When you actually went, you learned, and you had to put it to practical use. You had to do write-ups. You had to write up every session that you did with the person, what was the outcome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, submit it all. It's reviewed, and then they engage you to say, yes, okay, you meet the criteria and you've done all of the work and here's everything and you've put it to practical use. Now you can actually use that term.
Hi, everybody. I'm sure you've heard me bragging about Paleo Valley over the years of listening to my podcast, and there's a very good reason for that. Not only do I love the genius of Autumn Smith, a holistic nutritionist, but her products are phenomenally good. My kids love them, I love them, and we all use them every day. My students love them, my clients love them, and they are absolutely top-notch. One of my kids' favorite snacks is Paleo Valley's bone broth in chocolate. They love to make their hot chocolate drink themselves, simply by whisking up collagen-rich protein powder in a mug of hot water. And I'm happy to let them indulge, as I know it is packed full of great nutrition for them in the disguise of a sweet treat. Even us big kids love our sweet treats, and isn't it great when we can enjoy something that not only tastes great, but is truly great for us? Paleo Valley's 100% grass-fed bone broth protein is the only of its kind made from truly grass-fed cows raised on pesticide-free grass pastures. It's made from bones, not hides, slowly simmered to extract the proteins and nutrients. Gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and dairy-free, the chocolate mix includes organic coconut milk powder, organic cacao bean, organic monk fruit that makes a sweet, creamy, delicious drink that my kids, family, and friends just can't get enough of. You can also add to smoothies, use it in baking, or mix it with your coffee for a healthy mocha treat. Paleo Valley's bone broth protein is also available in vanilla and unflavored. And I promise you, not only will you love this stuff, your kids will love it. You can giggle and laugh because they think they're getting a sweet dessert right before bed, but they will love it and sleep great. And boy, do we parents love it when our kids sleep great. Enjoy Paleo Valley's amazing products.
bone broth protein comes in vanilla, an unflavored option, great for adding a boost to your baking soups and stews, and also their new and delicious salted caramel flavor, which is now the favorite in the Chek household. Try Paleo Valley's bone broth protein and save 15% on your purchase by going to paleovalley.com/Chek15. That's paleovalley.com/CHEK15. We hope you enjoy Paleo Valley's bone broth protein just as much as we do.
You could put it to practical use, and now you can use it. So you're actually using it. And so having gone through his program, I went and I actually worked with the Waiataha in New Zealand, Chief Tapurahau, and learning from grandmothers there and learning the New Zealand way. And it was amazing. It was amazing. That brought me to South America, to the Mapuche. I worked with Alberto's wife, and basically I met grandmother Luz Clara through Alberto's wife's program. And grandmother Luz Clara told me that my medicine was strong by then, because I had been around the wheel now. And I called myself a shaman, and I was I wasn't a medicine woman, but I was a shaman. I was a shaman practicing. I'm doing sessions, I'm doing healing. I did my work. I faced a lot of all of the work that I had to do. And she said, "You need to go home." I said, "Go home to what? Go home to New York? I'm a New Yorker, And she goes, "No, you need to go home to Africa." Africa? I've never been to Africa. Well, how am I going to go home to Africa? You mean go home to Africa? I'll take my husband. We'll go. No, you need to go by yourself. By myself? You mean by myself with my girlfriends then? No, you need to go by yourself. You need to walk alone. How am I going to go to Africa and go by myself and go alone? And I don't know anything about Africa. So there I am in South America. And I'm like, okay. And, with Marcela Lobos, which is Alberto's wife, we also did a vision quest. We went up the Andes and we separated the top of the Andes. And we basically said, okay, go off. She had given us a certain amount of tasks that we had to do by ourselves. And I went to do my prayer ties and my tasks and talk to God, talk to Creator. And I said, okay, Creator, you've told me through grandmother Luz Clara that I'm supposed to go to Africa, but I have no idea how to get to Africa. If you provide a way for me to go to Africa, I will go. I will go, but you have to show me a way. I have no idea how I'm going to get to Africa. So Marcella hits the drum and I come back rather quickly than the other women. And Marcella's talking to a woman named Lorraine. And Lorraine, she's talking back and forth with Lorraine. She goes, yeah, my dear friend has told me that I should go. She wants to go to Africa. She wants to go, on this trip, but I don't feel called to go to Africa. Do you want to go, Lorraine? Lorraine's like, I'm from the Philippines. I don't want to go to another third world country. I'm from one, But I know Enolia wants to go. And I'm looking at this going, no way. No way. No. You're kidding. This is 5 minutes that I'm sitting there. And Marcella turns around and she looks at me and she goes, Enolia, my friend wants me to go to Africa and I don't feel called to go. Do you want to go in my place? And I look at her and I said, yeah, I do. She said, okay, let me call her. And if she says yes, you can go. And so a couple of days go by in the retreat. She comes back to me and she says, my friend said you can go. And so I'll give you her name. You probably have her music already. And I'm like, who? And she's like, it's Deva Premal. And I'm like,
wow, that's crazy.
No, I don't know if I have her music. She said, give me your phone. Look up your phone. Look on iTunes. And I did. I had Deva Premal's music. So I went on a walking safari with Deva Premal
That's
and a
crazy.
small little entourage.
That's
And we
amazing.
walked 100 miles across the East and West Savo parks of Kenya with the Maasai.
Wow.
And remember, I talked about connecting with the crystal skulls
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the red dirt.
Yep. There it was.
So I flew into Kenya. We flew out to a small little village right at the base of Kilimanjaro. And I can't remember the name of the base, but I remember being Malindi, I believe it was. And I remember being at the Malindi, and then they drive us out to the camp that we're going to stay at. And how this worked is that we're in a campground and we get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and there were like 30 men, and they would break down our whole camp and they would move it 10 miles ahead, and we would walk the 10 miles. And then we would hit camp. But it wasn't just walking the 10 miles. We would cross the river. We would cross the Savo River, which was alligator infested.
Ooh.
And we would sing across the river, and we would walk, and then we'd have to cross back over to the river to get to camp. And these guys would break down the camp and bring the camp back up and cook for us, and we could take our showers and everything else. And then maybe we drive around in the evening, but we averaged 10 miles a day, 10 days, 100 miles. And I was able to have this beautiful moment where I knew everyone, but I wasn't committed to talking and really engaging and, making sure my friends are taken care of. So I could kind of have that personal space I needed, that grandmother Luz Clara said I needed to have. And Deva is a beautiful heart. She
Oh,
is
yeah.
just a wonderful heart.
You can feel it in
And
her voice.
yes. And she taught me some of her Sanskrit songs, and I taught her some of my native songs, and we were going back and forth. And I remember her asking me, why do Native American songs always have hey, ya, ya, ya in it? And I was like, I don't know. I just learned them. I learned them as I learned them. But it was so much fun exchanging songs and having that time and having that moment and watching the sunrise and waking up to the sounds of all of Africa. And I remember that there was this moment we were halfway through the trip, and our guides were wearing all camo, and they were coming to get us, and they came up over this hilltop, and it was all red dirt. And there was my dream.
Yeah.
That was my dream. That was my meditation. And that was a profound journey. The first 3 days, I was worried about, will I make it? How can I make it? I wasn't in the best of shape at the time. And, I had practiced. I had actually practiced walking, getting up and making sure I could walk. And I had averaged about 4 or 5 miles, but this was 10 miles.
Mm.
And it was wonderful. I never felt so connected with the land. It was so profound and so wonderful, and so many epiphanies and such clarity of thought that when I got back to my job, upstate New York, and went into that corporate office on Monday, I gave notice and I was done by Friday.
Beautiful.
So with that, I decided that once I gave notice, I started my own business, Infinite Possibilities, Journey to Empowerment. I now then possess the ability I had gotten permission from Grandmother Isabel to teach drumming workshops. You need permission if you're going to represent yourself as a native or native teachings. You do not ever, ever, ever charge for native teachings. Those are always given freely, and ceremonies are always given freely, and I remember, being able to go around and offer these workshops. And I remember being called, "Oh, you're charging." And it's like, no, that's my time and that's my travel, but I'm not charging for the teaching. Would you like me to give it to you? I'll give it to you right here and right now. And that started the journey across the world. So I had moved from New York to California. At the time, my husband and I decided to part ways when I left corporate because I had changed.
Yes, of course.
I had fully changed. Our boys were grown. Our boys were 25 and 23, and they were grown men and they were living their own lives. And I was a whole nother person. Everything in me had changed,
A new life.
a new life. And so I picked up and I moved to California and I lived in Santa Monica for 5 years.
Wow.
From Santa Monica, I went to Arizona to Tennessee to Namibia.
Wow, that's a big jump.
Because at the end and the tail end of California, I met my now husband, in California. Actually, I met him in Atlanta and he lived in Florida, I lived in California, and we did the long distance thing. And then he finally moved out to California, and then every jump from there was together, except that he had been called back to Angola, where he's from, in Benguela. And it was during COVID, and I didn't want to be left in the US by myself. So I went to Namibia, next door to Angola, and I lived there for 6 months. And then he found a way to pull me into Angola. And I've been living here ever since.
That's amazing. What a beautiful journey and so much great experiences and wisdom. It's interesting because in the beginning, when you started telling your story, I'm clairvoyant and I get visions. And within about the first 5 minutes, I saw 13 powerful women sitting in a circle with a fire in the middle. And I said to my soul, are these Enolia's guides or teachers? And my soul said, yes. I said, how many of them is there? And my soul said 13. But I said, well, then she was talking. I said, usually there's 12. And my soul directed my inner vision, and you were in the circle. You were one of the women in the circle. And interestingly, you had this beautiful regalia on, but you had horns on your head, like a headdress with horns like antlers, which many shaman wear. And they were all in what looked like a state of prayer, but they were directing their energy into the fire. And the fire was glowing like a sun in my third eye. But I just thought I would share that with you because they're in your field all the time. But the cool thing is you're in your field.
Thank you. And then, I didn't share about Africa, and I don't want to leave it out because I had the opportunity to study with the Sangomas in South Africa, and they're powerful. I had the great opportunity to visit in what's called the Sangoma cave. And so Sangoma is another term for shaman.
Oh.
And Sanusi is shaman of shamans.
Mm.
Okay. And the Sangomas actually, a percentage of them actually live in this particular cave where they are immersed all the time in the energy field.
Yeah, caves are amazing.
Unbelievable. And I remember walking in and a woman saying, I see you. I've been waiting for you. Come. And I'm like, okay. And again, a couple of things happened to me there that were just like really, really, well, lots of things happened all over the place, but two things. One, I met this woman, to see an African woman with piercing blue eyes.
Ooh, wow, that's unusual, isn't it?
It's very unusual. And then what was even more unusual is I was introduced as a Sangoma of America to her. And I was standing no more than a foot away from her. But the wild thing is when I pierced into her eyes, I could see my whole body, my whole being in her eyes.
Wow, that's very amazing. One with all.
One with all. And I was too close to be able to be seen as a complete body in her eyes, but I could see it. I understood that I was in a very special place. And as we went through the cave, because I was with the Sangoma who took me through from South Africa, God bless her, and it was such an honor to be there with her. The woman that called me out, that saw me, told me that I was a healer, that I needed to immerse more in the energies, and that's where my strength was. And that I was things I was going to be doing that I had no idea that I was going to be doing. And so we said our prayers. Another Sangoma asked me, because I had on, I was wearing the colors of the Sangomas there. I was wearing the attire of the Sangomas. And she apparently didn't get to leave the cave much. And she had a very tattered scarf that represented what we do. And I was wearing the exact same one, but it was brand new because I had just arrived and I had just purchased it. And she asked me would I switch with her, and I said I'd be honored to switch with her because first of all, I go back and forth to the city of Johannesburg. I can get it, and then second of all, the fact that she wanted to share that energy with me, and it felt very positive, and so we did, and that's something that I cherish. I never replaced it. I kept hers. I kept hers, but South Africa and then Angola. I was initiated by the Ovamundu, and I was presented as at the time when my husband was my fiance, as his future wife. And I had to go through a series of traditional activities that they wanted me to do in order to be accepted by the family as his promised. And I went through that initiation and passed.
That's cool.
And then here I sit. So that's it full circle.
That's beautiful. What a journey. It's really, I'm trying to find the words for it. Magical, mysterious. The golden thread of spirit drawing you into your fullness.
You know what it is too? It's that when I left corporate, when I had that 100-mile walk, that was when I truly surrendered.
Yeah.
I surrendered because I had to have my plan and I had to know how I was going to do it, what I was going to do. And when I picked up from New York and I moved to California, I learned how to allow spirit to guide my life and stop trying to plan everything and force it and make sure that I'm going to be here, make sure that I'm going to do this and make sure that I'm going to do that. But to say, okay, show me.
Mm-hmm.
Show me how I should navigate through this. Give me the clarity to navigate through this. Show me the next steps. And when I look back now over my life, spirit put me in so many different places. I'm so honored and I'm so fortunate and so blessed. I've met people in this world that they really weren't of this world. They were in this world, but they really weren't of this world.
Spirit walkers.
I've got to sit with them and learn from them. And then I never saw them again. But I look back and it was like, why me? Why was I so fortunate? And then going full circle to be initiated by Grandmother Isabel, it was interesting because she goes, as a medicine woman, your community selects you and wants you to be there. Who is your community? My grandmother. Do I go to Nepal and talk about the children that I met there? Or do I go to India and I talk about the youth and the adults that I met there? Or do I go to New Zealand? Or do I go to South America? Which community do you want me to share with you that is engaged with me? And that's when she didn't hesitate. She's like, yeah, each of us has a choice and we get to cast our net however wide we choose. Some people cast it for just their community, their area, where they live. Some people cast their net for their state, some for their country. Mine's really that world, the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you for being that woman.
It's it's humbling. It's humbling in every way because you look and you go, okay, how do I do this? What do I do? And I close my eyes and I'm spirit, show me. Show me, show me, show me. And allow.
Well, I think that's a great lesson for all of us in itself. It's a hard transition. And I think our egos and our sort of cultural programming makes us very afraid of change. And I think from my own experience and what you've shared, that sometimes we need to be in an earthquake or a thunderstorm or a lightning storm or a situation where our compass bearings are thrown off and get to the point where we really are ready to ask for guidance and be truly open to it, or we just keep ourselves trapped in the world of materialism and objectivity, and we never really make contact with spirit.
You are so, so right. And, it brings me to this little story that someone told me. I don't remember who, but they told me that there's a good angel and there's a not so good angel. I'm not going to say a bad angel, just a not so good angel. And here we are humming along life, and the good angel's trying to get our attention and can't get our attention. We're all caught up into our materialism, our ways, our drama, or whatever. And they don't know how to get our attention. So he talks to the not so good angel and says, please create something for their attention to be brought back. And so that something happens. That something is we fall, we trip, something happens, and what ends up happening is that we go, oh creator, oh God, oh spirit, why me? Guess what? The angel now has your
I
attention.
call that the arrival of the pain teacher.
And then, yes, and then you get to navigate, and then that clarity comes because you're turned inward. You've turned to that other side to say,
it's so true. And it's just great to hear from you and someone with your experience to give people the confidence to understand the depth and the truth of this, because for many it's not even in their perceptual field yet. So they unfortunately keep reacting with the same habits that led them to that place and don't hold still and open, ask. And, it's like people that run to doctors and get more and more pills instead of really just sitting still and saying, how am I creating this? What am I doing to bring this to myself? And this is why I love the saying Bernard Jensen, I think it was Dr. Bernard Jensen, said in one of his books, if you go to the doctor, don't ask your doctor what you should take, ask your doctor what you should take away. And sometimes we have to really look carefully at what we need to take away so that we can be more in tune with the harmony of nature and who we really are in great spirit. And sometimes the pain teacher comes to take the things away that are distracting us from being who we came here to be. And I think, your story is such a taking away of the corporate identity and the world of the materialistic, objective, achieve, go, do, versus feel, be present, and turn yourself over in service to spirit, which is quite a hard transition for most people in the Western mindset.
You're saying such a powerful thing right there. And I'm going to emphasize this because corporate was killing me. I mean, literally killing me. If you look at our industry today, the way that it is set up, Why do you think that all these additional services kick in at 50 years
Because
old?
that's when you have no more capacity to participate.
Exactly. Well, all of a sudden they're checking for things because what happened is that all of your dysfunctions and your dis-ease
Yeah.
manifests to disease by the age of 50. And after 50,
Hmm.
they start looking for it. They start looking for it. That's why certain exams kick in after 50 years old. Certain extra checks kick in after 50 years old because they start looking for it. And I remember having my scare at 48. And what it was is that I was having pain walking. And I didn't understand why. And I figured my back was out, right? So I'm in corporate. It's a year before I take the journey to Kenya. And I go to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor goes to adjust my neck and do the adjusting. And he feels it and he goes, "Do you realize you have a lump in your neck?" And I go, "No." He says, "Well, you really need to get that checked out." I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, well." He's like, "No, you need to get this checked out ASAP." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And I feel, and I have a lump in the size of a
Wow.
golf ball sticking out of my neck on the left side. And I was so checked
Hmm.
out of my body in corporate that I didn't even realize
Wow.
that a size of a golf ball. So I go and I go to the doctor and I go to a PA because I couldn't even be bothered with the doctor. I hated the medical field. They always kind of dismiss you. And the PA goes, "I'm going to refer you to a neurosurgeon." Neurosurgeon? What the heck for? So I'm like, okay. So I go and they're like, okay, yeah, you have a lump. Let's go get an ultrasound. So I go get an ultrasound. And then I try to get back into the doctor and it goes, "Oh, it's going to be 4 months before you can see him." Pissed me off. I was angry. How dare you tell me go get an
Yeah.
ultrasound and then can't be bothered
Yeah.
to see me to tell me the results? So they said, "Well, what you should do is get another referral." So I got another referral, but they said, "It's going to take a month and a half to get in. Take another ultrasound right before you come in. We'll give you that. And then we'll tell you, the difference between the lump and see if it's shrinking or growing." So I finally get in to the other, doctor, neurosurgeon, and he goes, "Oh, it's growing. And, it's really easy. I can cut it out for you. No problem at all. And, actually are easier when they're hard. Do you want to wait till it gets hard and then I'll cut it out for you?" And I was furious. How dare you? You didn't tell me what it is. You're telling me that you're going to cut into my neck. You're telling me that it's easier when it's hard. So you're telling me, is it cancer? Cancer gets hard. Are you telling me when it's
Mm.
cancerous, it's easier for you? What the heck is this? How dare you? I was so angry. It took everything for me to hold my composure and said, "You're not going to do anything. Thank you." I walked out. And I remember going back to my house and I was into body butters at the time and I was making my body butter. And I had this aromatherapist working with me to help stabilize my recipe. And she's like, "Enolia, what's wrong with you? Something's off." And I shared with her what I had just went through. And she says, "Well, I don't know if this is going to help, but I went to this wonderful third generation acupuncturist. Her name is Dr. Yang. And if you go to her, I don't know if she can help you or not, but she'll most certainly talk to you." So I made an appointment with her. And she said, "Come in." I went. I had a 20-page intake form that I had to fill in. And I go and I meet with her, and she spent 2 hours getting my background. She spent 2 hours with me. Nobody's spent 2 hours. This guy who's a neurosurgeon spent 3 minutes with me and told me he was going to cut into my neck. She spent 2 hours with me and then told me to come back in 2 days and she would determine whether she would work with me or not. So I came back in 2 days and she explained to me, not only was
Mm.
this my lymph node that was sticking out in my neck, but that the whole left half of my body was inflamed and shutting down. And that's why I was having pain. And I looked at her and I said, well, what do I need to do? And she said, it's going to be your diet, it's going to be exercise, and you have to see me twice a week. Every week. I don't want any excuses. No excuses. Because if you can't make the commitment, I'm not going to work with you. I said, well, I can make the commitment, but you know what? Can you have this done by like 8 months? Because I'm going to Kenya and I'm going on a walking safari across Kenya, 100 miles. She goes, oh, no, you're not. I said, oh, yes, I am. Oh, no, you're not. Oh, yes, I am. You tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. I'm going. She said, you don't realize how serious this is. I said, I realize how serious it is, but I'm telling you that I have the self-discipline to get it done. Tell me what I need to do. She said, you're not going. You're not taking this serious. I said, I'll make a deal with you. I said, 1 month before the safari, if you say I can't go, I won't go. And this is with Deva Premal. This is the one I was preparing for. And so basically, I made a deal with her and I started my regimen. And I'm telling this story because I want our listeners to hear that many of us know that we have issues like this. And we go, oh, I'm too old. I can't change. It's too hard. I don't want to do this. It's changing my eating. It's changing my diet, blah, 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 blah. Stop it. Stop it. I want you to know there had to be food in my food. If it was processed, it wasn't entering my mouth. I walked every day. I walked in pain. I walked until there was no more pain, but I walked. I took herbs. She said I had to strengthen my kidneys, liver, and adrenals. And I went to an herbalist. She gave me specific things for strengthening those. And I did a full court press and I cut out the stress in my life. I started letting things go. I didn't care. I went home at 5:00. I got there at 8. I didn't care if they had extra work. I wasn't going to do it. They weren't going to kill me because how I was behaving before it already was happening. And they're like, well, you're not as engaged. Well, I'm just not as engaged. And so 7 months passed. And so I had been working and in Delft, this had happened in February and here it was August and I wanted to go on this walk in September. And so August, I found the nerve to sit down with Dr. Yang and I said, what do you think? Do you think I can go on this walking safari? Do you think that I can make this trip? And she said, sit down. And so I sat down and I'm just like, please, Creator, I want to go. I really want to go. And she said, and she starts it off really like chastising me. Anyone who would have ever told me that they could actually say that they could do something like this and work to be healed in such a way that you're asking, I would have called them a liar right up front. She said, but you are like 80%. You can go on your walking safari, come back.
That's great. Good job. Congratulations.
Yeah. And that's why it was so easy to quit when I got back, because I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, and it's the case with so many people in the world. And that whole corporate identity is killing the entire planet, unfortunately.
It is. Because we think that the machine has to run, and then the decisions that the machine is making aren't conducive to being in balance, aren't conducive to our environment. Exactly. But yet we're so afraid of daring to step out on our own that we're like, well, I have to work for the cog. I have to be a cog in the machine. I have to, because it guarantees me that salary. And I'm afraid to do anything else, And that's why I wrote the book that I wrote. I wrote about how I transitioned because there's so many of us who don't want to be there. There's so many of us that don't want to be there, but we don't know how. We don't know how to leave. We don't trust ourselves enough, or we're not quite sure what steps should be taken. How do we transition? Yes. We just don't know. And so I shared my story. So hopefully
I think it's beautiful. I'm very grateful that you did. Enzymes are one of the most important things we can use to supplement our diet. Very few people have normal levels of digestive enzymes. It's extremely common to be digestive enzyme deficient because so many people are eating cooked foods, processed foods, packaged foods, etc. The best digestive enzymes I've ever found are masszymes by Bioptimizers. And one of the things I like about them is not only are they the most advanced technology for how they're produced, the science behind them, but I take them on an empty stomach every morning and every night as proteolytic enzymes to help clean my body. So I've got Wade here, who's the formulator of these enzymes, to tell us how do they work as digestive and proteolytic enzymes, because today I think we really need to be supplementing with high quality enzymes. So Wade, what's unique about masszymes?
Well, one of the interesting things is undigested protein is one of the biggest contaminants that cause problem for people, whether it's in their blood or inflammatory conditions or even impairing recovery. And it's quite common amongst athletes who have high protein diets, interesting enough, who are looking to add recovery, but they're not breaking down their protein effectively. And that was my case way back in the day as a former bodybuilding champion. So we set about cultivating and developing an enzyme formulation that handled all of the amino acids in a pH range from 2 to 12, as well as providing an assortment of assistant enzymes. In other words, it doesn't just break down protein, it handles carbohydrates, it handles fats, it handles fibers, a variety of different things, and they work synergistically together to make sure that you can break down just about any food and digest it properly. Now, when you talk about the difference between enzymes, there's digestive enzymes and systemic enzymes. Systemic enzymes such as like nattokinase or serrapeptase. Well, they don't help break down digestion, but they can break down inflammation or inflammatory conditions, undigested proteins, or scarring tissue inside the body. Well, it turns out when you take masszymes on an empty stomach, it works exactly the same way. It will go into the bloodstream and now works as a systemic enzyme, reducing inflammation, accelerating recovery times. Matt just tore his Achilles tendon and made a full recovery after surgery within a few weeks, which they expected for many months. He was taking as many as 100 a day. Now, I'm not suggesting people do that, but this was an extreme condition. And the bottom line is masszymes is great for recovery, for cleaning up undigested proteins in the system, as well for digesting just about any meal. If this isn't the best digestive enzyme or systemic enzyme that you've ever taken, you get your money back. That's the Bioptimizer guarantee.
Right now, you can get a bottle of masszymes for free. All you need to do is pay a small shipping fee, and there's no catch. There's no tricks, no forced continuity, nothing to cancel. They are so confident in their products that they offer a 365-day money-back guarantee, so I'm positive you'll be satisfied with the results. So I strongly suggest you head over to the Bioptimizers website and grab your bottle before they either run out or take this offer away.
You can try Bioptimizers masszymes at bioptimizers.com/living4D and get 10% off using the code PAUL10. That's bioptimizers.com/living, the number 4 and the letter D, and the code is PAUL10. Plus, Bioptimizers always have great bonuses and offers when you purchase multiple bottles. So make sure you check them out at bioptimizers.com/living4D and use the promo code PAUL10 for your 10% discount.
Enolia, beautiful, beautiful, heart-touching stories, deeply emotional for me for many, many reasons. I'd love now to talk about your 7 principles of self-mastery, which you teach both in a book that you wrote and a masterclass, if I understand right. So would you like to overview those 7 principles for us?
I really would. And I'm going to tell you the premise of the book. You heard my stories. And when I was in New Zealand with visiting the Waiataha, I had a dear friend of mine who I met on that trip basically say to me, "Oh, I need something to read." And I had been writing my memoir. And I'm like, "Hey, I wrote this, it's not finished yet, but I just need something to read." Okay, so I gave it to her. And she's reading and she goes, "Where did these stories come from?" And I'm like, they are the stories of what my indigenous teachers taught me. Each one of the elders brings to bear a different principle. And she's like, you need to share where the stories came from. So the 7 principles of self-mastery is how I accomplished doing my work.
Yes.
It is the tools that I learned from each one of my indigenous teachers and how I was able to put them together to really afford myself to break the patterns, identify the triggers, understand what aspects of my personality were destructive, and how many of those destructive personality parts of me were leading.
Right.
How I was stuck in a story. And the fact that I was always reacting all the time based on my emotions. So there are all of the tools we already possess, not outside of ourselves. Tools that you possess, I possess, we all possess. We're all capable of noticing. We're all capable of understanding when we're stuck in a story. We're all capable of being the observer versus the reactor. We're all capable of knowing what aspect is forward and front at a particular time. And you place that with the 7 actual tools, principles, the power of our voice, how we define fear, how judgment is projected, why forgiveness is important, how our limited belief systems impact us and have us stand in our own way. Where are we sourcing our power from? And what does it mean to stand in your power?
Yes.
And as you traverse these 7 principles, at least through my masterclass, it takes about 10 weeks to go through them, to apply each one of those and build upon them by integrating them into our daily lives. That's the difference. So it's akin to walking barefoot. When you're walking barefoot, you watch every step that you traverse, right? You don't take one step for granted, because if you hurt your foot or your foot gets cut, broken into, whatever the case may be, you're going to regret it. And so you're watching for that pain because you know that you're barefoot. But when you have your shoes on, you don't think twice. You're just walking everywhere. We're all walking around with our shoes on. And this teaches us how to take those shoes off, how to be aware of every step that we're taking, and how not to analyze, but to be aware of the types of decisions that we're making. Are we even pausing at the decisions to acknowledge that we're at a fork in the road and I always go right? And why is it that I don't go left to get a different outcome? Is it my fears? Is it the projected judgment that's on top or placed upon me? Is it my own self-judgment? Am I in my own way with my limited beliefs? Why am I always going right? So the masterclass is laying the foundation of being able to look in the mirror and fully loving and embracing what you see in an aware point of view. To always be able to shift your perspective, to know that there's not just one way of looking at things, but there are many ways, and that we need to shift how we view things sometimes to get a multiple perspective point of view so that we can evaluate in a more unbiased way instead of a limited belief way.
Right.
And these are all things that we possess, but we need to practice and engage them. We need to be reminded. What reminds us of them? That is what we master. That's what we work on. Yeah.
Could you just, I was just going to ask you, before you shift off and we're ready to move on, I'd love to hear the 7 principles one more time.
They are the power of our words,
Power of our words.
how to redefine fear,
How to redefine fear.
judgment, letting go,
Letting
letting
go.
go of, letting go of judgment. Forgiveness is freedom.
Forgiveness is freedom.
How to let go of limited beliefs.
How to let go of limited beliefs.
Where do I source my power?
Where do I source my power?
I am powerful.
I am powerful. Aho, Great Spirit. Yeah, those are beautiful. And those are expanded on, obviously, in your book, but you're saying you also have a training program. Is this a training program live or online or both?
It's a mixture of both. And what you will do is that each week you will review videotapes at your leisure that I've provided for you. And every week we meet as a group and we discuss this and we discuss how to integrate it, and we pull apart the issues that you're facing so that you can learn how to integrate and utilize the tool within your life. I never ask you to go outside of yourself. So we're not going to be playing with papers and, oh, I need a tool, so here I'm going to get a piece of paper and here's the list of all the tools. Like, no, 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 no. This is inward.
Yeah.
This is inside you. You know how to notice. So notice how you're behaving. Notice what you're saying. Notice that you don't pause when you're thinking. Notice when you do pause. Which direction do you always go? Notice. That's not outside of yourself. These are things that we have to retrain ourselves to do because we are so busy expressing that we're on automatic pilot. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. I have to be busy. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, or I'm reacting. This is just a reminder to take pause. Take pause. Take inventory and stock of who you are, how you think, how you behave, and what triggers you.
Mm-hmm.
And why it triggers you. Why it triggers you. Is it something that happened in your childhood, your cultural upbringing, or is it something that just took place last week?
Yes.
So
Beautiful.
these are important pieces, yeah.
We did talk a bit about the shamanic revival and the importance of this currently as we began the podcast. I'd love it if maybe you could share a few key practices anybody can use to more come into touch with what I might call a shamanic way of relating or connecting or being in relationship to self, other, and world. Is there a few just basic things you'd recommend anybody could just practice in their daily life?
Yeah, there are. First of all, when we get up and we walk outside, take pause. Take pause and really acknowledge the fact that you're walking through nature. See, part of the shamanic way is acknowledging nature and being in balance with nature. Well, how can you be in balance with nature when you don't even notice it?
Right.
When you're just moving so quickly and so fast and you got to rush and you're trying to be there and you're trying to meet this person and blah, 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 blah. When I take pause and I'm walking, let's say I take a walk in the park, I could tell you when a tree is moving because of the gentle breeze, or when the tree is moving because there's something other than the gentle breeze.
That's interesting.
Because when we're walking, the nature signs are all around us. This goes back to, and I honor Grandfather Lynch Archuleta. We have to really look at what we're looking at. So when that butterfly flies by and we go, oh, that's a butterfly. Is it a butterfly? Look. Is it a butterfly? Because, people know that there's a fairyland, but they never acknowledge that there's a fairyland. Like, they never look. There are times I've been in dead of winter, not a breeze is moving or around. It's still as can be, but yet the trees are moving like there's a breeze.
Mm-hmm.
But we are usually so outside of ourselves, we don't notice things like that.
Right.
I've been on the walk where all of a sudden a gust of wind comes, leaves fall, and it's just in my little circle, and it's
Mm-hmm.
nowhere else. And it's like, okay, there's something going on more here. It's not just a breeze. So when I say take notice, you can't even get to that level of noticing if you're an automatic pilot and you
Yeah.
don't even notice where you're walking. So take pause, notice, and do it in nature, because nature will speak back to you if you can acknowledge it.
I think that's an important point and practice that I would just like to share myself, because it's something that's very important to me. I think we're so used to listening externally, but just as you're saying, to be aware and observe and pay attention, I think listening inside, like quieting your mind and listening inside, because I think if people could get to that place of inner listening, they would be amazed that there's a conversation going on all around them, and trees can talk to you, plants can talk to you, creeks can talk to you, streams can talk to you, the wind can talk to you, all the animals, the squirrels, bees, wasps, everything around you is actually in a conversation, and oftentimes they're trying to talk to you. And I've had
Right.
very profound experiences of communications that revealed things to me, or plants. I might have been working with a patient. It was lunch, and I was going for my little meditation walk around the property, and a message comes to me: ask them about this, and it came from a tree, or it came from the emptiness and the space inside of me, and I feel it's a real good shamanic practice to just take time when you're walking and observing nature to also listen inside of yourself. I just would like to hear your thoughts on that.
I would say that that goes into the second piece that I would offer that anyone can do, which is trust your first instinct, that first voice. Don't
Yes.
second guess it.
Mm.
So you are being informed, just as you said, Paul, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That voice is talking to you, that inner voice telling you to calm down, that inner voice that says, I really want you to do this, but you ignore your desires, you ignore that voice, and you go, oh, I can't do that, or oh, I must be going crazy because I have this thing in my heart where I keep wanting to do this, but I can't see myself doing that, or I shouldn't do that, you know. And we don't trust ourselves. And that's the very first thing that you should be doing, because it's
Yes.
coming within, and coming from within, we're always connected to Creator. And when we're always connected to Creator, that inner voice is that tie in to Creator. Why wouldn't we trust that?
Yes. It's very, very important. And people are so trapped in their mind that they've lost touch with the fact that a mind is built out of relationships. There's no such thing as the flow of thought without 2 points of sentience. So the thought always has to come from something that's conscious to something that's conscious. Otherwise, it's not consciousness. And because we are all inherently made of relationships between our cells, our glands, our organs, our systems, the spirits, the consciousness in each of them, and the water and the food and the air that we bring in from outside of us, this is all the condensation of God consciousness. That's all the embodiment of spirit and source. And I think people get so caught in religious idealism by memorizing things written on paper, but it doesn't take them into the union with source and the realization that this is God's body, the universe is God's body, and it's alive, and it's part of us, and it's in us. And we can't be here without all of it. We can't be here without the air. We can't be here without the water. We can't be here without the earth. We can't be here without the sun, without the moon, without the warmth of our metabolism. And all of those things are made possible by all the relationships that we're engaging in. And so people get so caught in like you say, in the trying to pay their bills and dealing with, they spend most of their time in fear, but they don't realize that there's all this help in us and around us, and the depth of the wisdom. I mean, I've learned things from the plants and trees right here in my office that blew my mind, and it's like,
Right.
it makes life so much more rich and so much more full. And you feel, I found in my own life that as I got deeper and deeper into my connection to nature and to spirit, that I didn't need to be afraid, because I never felt alone. I knew I had all this help around me. I mean, I spent a lot of time working with stones, and even the stones will talk to you and tell you things. And many of my friends or students that came to me to learn how to work with stones used to think I was crazy, but then after they spend, sometimes 4, 5, 6 months, like stacking stones on the beach and emptying their mind, all of a sudden the stones start talking to them, and they call me up and say, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened today." I'm like, finally you got there. That's why I call them the stone Buddhas,
Right.
I think, it would help the world, the people of the world, so much if they knew that there's so much support and there's so much wisdom and so much guidance. And that wisdom and guidance is telling us how to bring ourselves back into harmony with nature and the world. And here we are, hoping AI is going to fix the problem, or Donald Trump or somebody else. It's like, yeah, good luck. How's that work for you so far?
Yeah, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. We always want to deify that which seems grander than us, to say that they're going to save us. But what we really need to do is we need to work on ourselves. I do a lot of reading, and I'm a lifelong learner.
Me too.
And one of the things that I just finished reading that really stood out to me, I was reading the Map of Consciousness, because I love to read other people's methodologies. And one of the things that was stated in the book was, what is the opposite of ignorance?
Wisdom.
What is the opposite of wit? And you would think it's wisdom, but it's not. It wasn't what he listed as wisdom. Do you know what he said the opposite of ignorance was?
Maybe emptiness?
It was humility.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It was humility. And the reason it was humility is because that which we don't understand, that which we haven't grasped yet, right? The most ignorant thing that I could do is to shut down and say it doesn't exist, it's not good enough, it's this, it's that, it's the other, versus the humility of saying, okay, share with me, show me, and help me to understand.
Yeah, and I think what's important is really, humility is a state of receptivity, right? If one's in the state of being humble, they're saying, I acknowledge you, I accept, I'm listening, I'm present. And ignorance is often, it's the
I'm shut down. It's like, I don't want to hear it.
Or it's the dark side of the I know mind, or hubris, right? It's like, plants that talk, you're crazy, it's like, really? Am I?
But in that receptivity, we're not reacting.
Yes.
And that's what's so important, because I love studying the masters, but every master has died some horrible death because they had information they wanted to share that the public wasn't ready for.
Right. It's true. Very true.
And had those people just been humble, we would have even greater works than we had. But instead, they had Pythagoras, secret societies, and everything else because the public wasn't ready.
Yes.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
Because we tend to persecute that which we don't understand, or we're not sure of, or we don't know, instead of just being humble and saying, okay, I'm going to be receptive and I'm going to listen. I don't have to understand at the moment, but I'm going to engage and I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn.
Hi, everybody. My family and I love Organifi's green juices. You can get your green juice in two excellent flavors, crisp apple and original mint. Not only are these products made with certified organic ingredients to support your family's nutritional needs, they each have some unique benefits. Your green juice crisp apple eases stress with an effective dose of 600 milligrams of ashwagandha per serving. Helps reduce cortisol spikes that increase snacking urges and aids keeping your blood sugar balanced. Why snack on inferior foods that lack nutrition and often lead to blood sugar spikes followed by blood sugar crashes when Organifi's green juices are super healthy, taste great, and are as quick to make as opening the package and adding water. Your green juice crisp apple is made from fresh apples picked right off the branch and are packed with micronutrients to support your body's needs. Green Juice Original Mint contains ashwagandha, chlorella, and spirulina. Reset your body every morning with 11 detoxifying superfoods. You'll love the delicious taste and your body will feel strong and stable with all the micronutrients in each serving. Green Juice Original Mint promotes balanced cortisol and stress levels, perfect for weight management, and helps rid the body of harmful toxins. Personally, I'm super grateful that Organifi makes such excellent, easy-to-use drinks and foods that keep us energized, healthy, and clean inside while decreasing the urge to crave on inferior snack foods. My kids love both flavors, and I love knowing that we can all be healthy together with Organifi's excellent crisp apple and original mint green juices. These products are excellent for work, on the road, sharing with friends, and anytime you need a nutritious boost that tastes good. To get your crisp apple and original mint green juices, go to organifi.com/Chek20. That's Organifi.com/Chek20. Save 20% on your purchase using the code Chek20, all caps, on checkout. Don't worry if you forget your Living 4D discount code because you'll see it right there on the landing page. Enjoy Organifi's excellent green juices.
Well, the beautiful thing that I've found over and over again is that the spirits that talk to us are happy to answer questions and give clarification.
Yes.
I love having these conversations. That's why I get up at 3:30 in the morning. I spend a lot of deep dialogue with my soul, with the spirits of the house, with the trees, the plants, the flowers, even the floor of my home. I love the floor. It's a terracotta floor. I lay on it and I feel so much energy, and it's like it helps me get into a state of peaceful emptiness, but I feel the flow of life force coming through it. And I think, when people realize that there can't be anything created without God in it, because only
Exactly.
God can hold the atoms together.
Yes.
And that
create order out of chaos.
Yeah, and that's the God's little trick is you're looking for me everywhere, but here I am. It's so hilarious. I mean, God's sense of humor is terribly sometimes wild and twisted, and sometimes just hilariously funny, but other times, so surprising it shocks you to your very core.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And then when you have that inner knowing and that inner understanding, there's like a divine alignment that your life aligns to, and then everything flows.
Yes.
And it's just so beautiful living life where things will flow one into another because of the trust that you have in Creator, the trust that you have in yourself, for allowing things to come through, for not being afraid to just share what you need to share, engage what you need to engage, and trusting that it will align and that it will flow.
The other thing I think is really important to share from my perspective is the deeper you get into the way of relating and living that we're talking about, the more true the North Star on your compass becomes. And you can recognize truth from falsity quite easily.
Yeah.
When someone says, consciousness only comes from a brain, and without a brain, you're not conscious. You're like, you have I can give you 50 reasons that's wrong. It's like, well, who created brains for one?
Right.
Have you ever thought of that? How did they get here?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one of the things I had listed for you to talk about is how shamanism in practice is medicine for the planet, the beings of nature, and it's medicine for people at this critical time in evolution. Now, we're kind of alluding to that in many, many ways, but because it's so important right now and the ecosystems are in such terrible shape while we spend all our money on rockets to get to Mars and all this other craziness,
Right.
and billions on war efforts and pouring money into vaccines that aren't doing a damn thing for anybody. I think I would love to hear more about shamanism as medicine and for people right now, and how that can really help us. Although we have talked a lot about it, I'd just love to open the door for you to share what's in your heart in that regard.
So, what's in my heart in that regard is that we don't realize how powerful a being we are,
Yeah.
period. We really don't. So, let's even just go down to power of our words, okay? And the fact that you, myself, all of us, we're all vibratory beings. We respond to vibration. We respond to the sacred geometries of that vibration that amplifies in certain states and in certain manners, or when it's presented to us. If we focused on ourselves and the amplification of what we're projecting in such a positive way, each one of us becomes that beacon. And when you have a bunch of beacons going off collectively,
Yes.
it's powerful.
Yeah.
You
For
know,
sure.
I think it was Drumvalo Melchizedek who used to hold heart circles. And he would have everyone gather in a circle, and he would everyone focus on, we need clouds. We need it to rain. We need it to rain. And it would become cloudy, and then it would rain. We are powerful beings in our vibration. So what happens with what's taking place today is everybody's focusing on what? Negativity, the drama, I feel oppressed, the toxicity of certain situations that are going on. And so their focus is not on what? Themselves. Their focus is not on what? The positivity, the being the beacon, the vibratory being that they are, that what they're saying actually amplifies out. So when they're saying, I hate this, I hate that, blah, 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 that's what's amplifying.
That's what they're creating.
That's what they're creating. And if you could just take it like a lighthouse, that stationary, prominent lighthouse, that's a beacon of light in the storm. And what are we doing when we see a lighthouse? We come out of the storm to find our way. So if we could just hold the state of our positivity and be the beacons that we are, to allow those who are going through their trauma and everything else to come out of the storm of it and to sit still and be that beacon with us, and stop allowing the circumstance to define how we feel, but be the force in the circumstance. You know, it only takes one person to say, you know what, I don't want to talk about all of this stuff. Time out. You know what? This isn't defining me. Here's where I stand on this. I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to be that beacon of light. Here's how I'm defining the world around me. Here's how I'm going to work through this. And I'm not going to let that set the tone of my day. I'm not going to let that set the tone of how I engage my relationships throughout the day. I'm not going to allow that to set the tone of how I treat others. That's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
That makes a difference. And then what happens is that we take away the energy that we give to those who are toxic, because we're not engaged with their toxicity. We're not commiserating with it. We're not even giving it attention. You know, toxicity only exists because we give it attention. We give it the energy behind what it's doing because we're talking about it, we're engaged in it, we're consumed with it.
Well, another thing I'd like to throw on the table in that regard that a lot of people don't think of, which I know to be true because I can see it, is when we are engaging in what you're referring to as toxicity, we're actually creating beings and attracting beings that resonate with that level of fear, and they feed off of it.
Yes.
And, this is one of the things when I'm running plant medicine ceremonies, I have to help people bring themselves out of fear and into a heart-centered state of mind, because I let them know, look, you don't want to invite the embodiment of your fears into your ceremony, because I can promise you, you're not going to like having to look at what you're creating. So my suggestion is you create exactly the experience you want to have in your heart now.
Exactly.
And be there. And if anything shows up that's less than that, then ask your soul to show you the love that you cannot see. And that's how you learn to see the other side. So you know how to go from the dark to the light, and even beyond that to just the pure oneness of being without needing a light-dark polarity. And I think that's one of the gifts that Lao Tzu really gave us, that most people read the Tao Te Ching and other books by Lao Tzu, but they don't actually understand what he's really saying.
Yes, I agree. That's huge. It really, really is.
Yeah. Now, your book, you have a book, Finding My Sovereign Voice of My Grandmother Elder, and you offer a journal, Discover Your Sovereign Self.
There's Finding My Sovereign Voice with My Grandmother Elder. And if you look in the corner, this is Grandmother Isabel Miwasaki that I talked about.
Right, yeah.
Bring it right up there with her buckskin dress and that serpent staff that I talked about.
She's in that circle of women that I saw and see. It's still around. It's always around you.
Right. And then this is the journal. And so what I did is I wrote about my experience about that retreat that I shared with you earlier. I wrote about what happened, how it unveiled, all of the different ceremonies, all of the different ways that I really put my foot in my mouth and made mistakes and everything else. But then what I did with the journal is that I summarized each chapter and I shared the lessons that I learned in that chapter. And then what I do is I come back and I ask you questions that relate the same types of lessons in your life.
Great idea.
How they engage. And then what I do is I give you affirmations also afterwards. And why affirmations? And I just love sharing, because people go, oh yeah, affirmations, you read it and it's good. But affirmations, mantras, it goes back to your power of your voice, power of your words. When you are resonating powerful and positive words, and you do it over a period of time, then that energy settles into the waters of your body, Dr. Masaru Emoto, and it has a positive impact and cause and effect on you. And then what you're resonating, in the words, the positive aspects of the actual words themselves, it shifts your energy. It lifts you up. It does. Really, really does. So,
yes. Yeah. Before I forget, you mentioned a book called The Map of Consciousness. Who is the author of that?
I was trying to think of his name, and I couldn't remember his author. I can get up and actually look really quick if you want me to. Wait, I have it right here. It's David Hawkins. That's who I was talking about.
David Hawkins, yes.
David Hawkins, because he also wrote Power versus Force, and I wrote that too.
I probably have that book in my library, but I'll look.
Yeah,
he writes some great stuff.
Yeah, and he reinforces that power of the voice, because he really talks about how you read in Power versus Force. You read it out loud, and you allow it to project, and that negates a huge percentage of the negativity that's out there in his methodology and approach to the power of the word and the map of consciousness. Yeah.
Now, we've talked about your 7 principles of self-mastery: empower, achieve, succeed.
7 principles.
That's a beautiful, I love the cover on that. What a gorgeous cover.
Thank you.
And then you have Know Thyself 30-day program to conscious living. Oh, so it's a book. It's not a program?
It's a book. It's a program and a book. So what I did is I have 30 days, and these are 30 little vignettes of asking you the right questions, but I also put 30 videos with them. So each day you can read out of the book and associate the video that goes alongside it. You can do the book alone, or you can do it with the actual video.
And the videos would be on your website?
They're on my website.
Yeah, great.
And so, and what I'm doing is I'm preparing you for what I would prepare you in the 7 Principles of Self-Mastery. I'm preparing you for the masterclass. I'm asking you questions that's going to have you really sit back and reflect and think inwardly, not externally. And I'm asking you questions that you have to dig deep.
Yeah, good. I love that.
Yeah. And then that starts preparing us, because many times we don't ask ourselves the right questions. We look in the mirror, and one of the first deep questions I was posed when I first started working on myself is, how do I lie to myself?
That's a good one.
How do I lie to myself? Like, I'm lying to myself if I'm saying I'm happy, because at the time I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was in corporate. I was miserable. I'm lying to myself when I say I'm healthy. I wasn't healthy. It was killing me. I'm lying to myself that I didn't want to change my circumstances. I just have to do this. Oh yeah, I'm great. I'm making a great salary. I have no problems, blah, blah. That's not true. So the very first thing is, can you really be honest with yourself?
Are you tired of feeling stuck? Whether you're stuck in your career, your health, or your daily routine, getting out of a rut can feel overwhelming. But I'm here to offer you the push you need to escape that rut. Here is your chance to transform your life from the inside out, to break free of whatever has been holding you back, and to make a lasting change to your life and career. The Chek Academy is the answer, bringing you fulfillment and purpose with step-by-step assistance, guidance, and learning. You'll be equipped to improve your health, and if you choose, guide others through their transformation too. And because the Chek Academy is designed for full-time workers, you can make this life-changing leap while still managing your regular day-to-day commitments. In year 1, you'll gain tools and strategies that really work, not quick fixes that are unsustainable. Starting with Paul's book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, you'll learn how to build healthy habits. Then you'll expand on these in Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1 online. Integrated Movement Science Level 1 online, and the prerequisites will show you how to train with confidence and precision. Chek mentors and faculty are there to guide and support you as you progress, as well as the community of your fellow students in the Chek Academy. We're now accepting applications for the spring enrollment, but don't wait, as these close on March 31st. So go to chek.group/L4D Academy. That's chek.group/L4D Academy. You know your best self is just waiting for you to make the decision. So come join us and turn 2025 into the year your vision becomes your reality.
There's a great saying, and I heard it from Greg Reese. Human beings are very good at tricking themselves, but very hard to convince that they have tricked themselves. And it's really true.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Is that the books that you wanted to share, or is there more?
Nope, those are the books that I wanted to share. Yes.
Yeah, I want to buy all of those books for you from my library. And I want to have you as a guest on my Spirit Gym mentorship group, because I would love maybe to have you share maybe the 7 principles or something. So I'll talk to you about that later. But I just think you have so much to offer. I think my Spirit Gym practitioners would just be blown open by your gifts, your presence.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The next topic I have is key concepts of shamanism, how anyone can apply in their life, but we've covered that pretty well. A shamanic approach to relationships with nature, with oneself, and in relationships. Maybe you can talk a little bit about a shamanic approach to being in relationship with spouses, children, coworkers, because I think that's one part we haven't touched on, but it's also very, very important. You did talk about in the beginning how you learned
Compassionate leadership.
compassionate leadership. And I think COVID's really broken up a lot of family and deep personal relationships to this very day. So maybe you can share something that might help people heal those relationships.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to talk about this, because I really do have some views on this. From a shamanistic approach, one of the first things that we had to do is we had to be non-judgmental, really, really learn how to sit with non-judgment, and then learning how to sit with non-attachment.
Yes.
Now, if you take that in balance with your relationships, there's a couple of different things that you can look at, right? So in our relationships, a lot of times when we're in relationships, we're all consuming.
Yeah.
All right. So in marriages, men might feel that they have to be all consuming of the woman, of which she feels like she loses her identity. That's an imbalance.
Yes,
or women might feel that they're all consuming of the men.
Yeah.
And which they're no longer in right relationship. We've forgotten how to say that when we're bringing two people, or when we're bringing people together, we're supposed to be walking in balance with one another. We're honoring what both brings to the table. And we've committed to walk side by side with each other, not be consuming of each other, not ruling one another, but that we both bring something to the table. We have our strengths and our weaknesses, but that when we're arguing, when we're debating, we're coming into right relationship or finding balance. You take two dynamics within a relationship. You take love and you take freedom. Too much love, you feel overwhelmed. Too little love, you don't feel like you're loved enough. We need to find the balance in love.
Yeah.
Too much freedom, I don't feel like you care. Too little freedom, oh my God, you're so controlling. We need to find the balance in freedom. And if you don't find those balances, the relationships don't last.
Yes.
But we don't even think to approach relationships in that regard at all.
Yeah. Many people ask me, how in the world can you navigate two wives? And I always tell them, look, 13 years we've been together. Penny and Angie have never had a single fight in 13 years. And the answer is we all honor and respect what we each bring to the table with a common mission and vision and values. Like we know what binds us together that's bigger than any one of us. And we know each of us has unique perspectives, skills, and abilities that the other doesn't have. And without the three of us, we could not do what we do. We could not pay for the place we live in. We could not run the workshops that we run. I mean, but I'm just really saying it took me a lot of time in my life to learn to let God come out of each person and know when it's there and to cherish it and not try to control it. I think a lot of men especially have a hard time letting their partners be who they really are, because there's this sort of patriarchal imprint of trying to make your partner do and be who you want them to be. And whenever that goes in either direction, it's a sort of destruction.
It is a sort of destruction. I agree with you. And then being able to have this conversation and, people will say, oh, well, they're just this way, that way, but it's our cultural upbringing. It's our people who are in our lives and us observing what relationships look like and not knowing that they can exist a different way. This is why it's so important to have conversations. This is why it's so important to seek different perspectives. This is why it's so important. And I'm going to share a story with you. I was here in Angola, and we were coming from Calendula Falls. Calendula Falls was as big as Niagara Falls in New York. It's beautiful, beautiful. And my fiance at the time, now my husband, and I were coming back, and we grabbed a cab, and we were 6 hours away from Luanda, where we needed to be, from Melange, and we're traveling back. And we finally get a taxi, and we jump in the taxi, it's packed, and I realize that I'm the only woman in the taxi, and this is a 6-hour ride. And so, in my normal nature, I smile. I always smile at people, engage them, don't turn my head down, look them right eye to eye. And they ask in Portuguese, who is she? And I know that she's not Angolan. And then my fiance, as the translator, translates back, and I'll just share the conversation. And I said, well, why would you think I'm not from Angola? And they said, because you're smiling. An Angolan woman would have kept her head down and looked down. And I said, well, why do you think she would do that? Well, she would have shown her discomfort. And I said, okay. And I didn't say anything else. And then they started asking me, well, what do you do? I do empowerment, coaching, et cetera, et cetera. Well, why are you here? I said, I do that here. Well, why would you want to do that here for women here? And it's like, well, why wouldn't I want to do it here? Well, what have Angolan women ever done for you? And it's like, we are women, period.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to do anything for me. I said, okay, well, Angolan women are ungrateful. And it's like, well, why would you say Angolan women are ungrateful? Well, I put a roof over their heads and food in their mouth, and they're just never satisfied. And they always are just want more. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you a question. Okay. I said, do you teach your women about budgets? Do you teach them the fact that you make a paycheck? And, we're talking basic things here, right? And they're like, no. So how would you expect her to understand that when she's requesting something from you, that you've paid all of the bills, you don't have enough left over, and therefore that's why you're saying no? Instead, what you do is you're just saying no. You're not giving her any other information, and all she knows is no. And so, of course, she's going to push back because all she knows is her needs are not being met, right? Well, I never thought about it that way because here, tradition says women have one role, men have another. So we go on to talk, and, they said, well, I have one for you. I'm like, okay, well, our marriages were arranged. And, I don't think I'm not happy with the person that my arrangement was done. I'm like, okay, well, all right, there's nothing I can say about that. And it's like, well, how would you fix that? And I was like, well, I can't fix that. I don't have any comments to fix that. I said, but my question to you is, what will you do? They said, well, what do you mean, what will I do? I said, well, if this has been your experience, are you going to propagate that same experience with your children? Are you going to turn around and do the same thing? Or does it stop with you? Are you going to
Amen.
allow your children to engage and marry for love versus marry for arrangement? Or are you going to continue on? Nobody had ever talked to them like this.
That's amazing.
Nobody had shared like this, and they're listening to me, and they said, okay, well, what do you think is the most important thing to an Angolan man? And I said, I don't know, God, your marriage. And they said, no, our children. I said, okay, so if your children are so important to you, well, why wouldn't you want to bring them up in a loving relationship and allow your wives to grow and prosper and be happy together? And then that way your children can flourish even more. So we all brought learnings. I learned that we all have to have the conversations that we assume that people have, and they haven't.
Yes.
And they were like, will you come to our village? Will you talk to our elders? Because no one has ever talked to us like this. And this is what we needed to do. I just never thought about it like that before.
Right.
And it was powerful. It was so powerful. Because I didn't come saying, well, in my way, we do it this way. I didn't come projecting where I came from onto them. All I asked them was the question, well, what would you do? Why wouldn't you do it? And no one had taken the time.
Yeah. It's sad because the unconscious patterning that people get into in any given culture or society or family or religion can create a matrix that limits creativity and novelty and leads people to living in flatland, and they don't think there's a way out of it because that's what my mom and dad did. That's how my grandma, and so they just don't even actually. And I'll tell you a story that Osho tells in his teachings that's quite representative of this. And this is a true story.
Okay.
There was a city, a small town in the mountains in India, but it was big enough that they had a prison. And in the prison, everybody in there had done at least 20 years, but the town went bankrupt and it was very expensive to run the prison. So the town elders had a meeting and said, what are we going to do with these prisoners? We can't afford to, run the prison anymore. And the prison warden said, well, everybody in there served over 20 years. Why don't we just let them go? And so they made the decision to let them go. So the prison warden went down to the prison the next morning, and they all had wrist shackles and ankle shackles because they were all, criminals of high degree. And so they undid all the shackles and they said, you're free to go. Many of them got up and walked out, but the prison warden and the crew came back the next day to start, doing the formal close down of the prison. And every single one of the prisons was not only back in their cell, but they had put their shackles back on. And the warden said, what in the world are you doing here? You guys are free. And they all said, we don't know where to go. We don't know what to do. And we cannot sleep without our shackles on. We feel like we don't know how to live that way.
Right.
And so there is the story, right? It's
Yeah.
we get so used to our shackles that we don't know how to live until someone like Enolia shows up and says, hey, you don't have to wear those shackles anymore. And here's what it looks like to walk without your legs bound, And I think that's just an important gift. And it's also a great example of how Spirit puts each of us where we need to be at the right time. And if we just share what's in our heart, we can undo shackles for people without even realizing we're doing it.
And it's really important to immerse yourself in the culture to understand how to do that.
Yes.
Because one of the reasons why I've been able to teach here is because the way that I teach does not project on any other culture onto the culture that I'm in.
Yes, that's very important.
It's very important. And then the other thing is to understand the emphasis of what's important within a culture versus what's not important in ours.
Yes.
And especially coming from a Western world, where, we don't value cooking as much as other cultures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like cooking here is like, if you don't cook, then you're not a woman. You must truly be able to craft your cooking and it has to be good and blah, 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 blah. The emphasis that is put on cooking, but yet in the Western culture, we don't. So when someone says, I feel so constrained and all I have to do is cook, but I know that I have to cook and blah, 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 blah. And in our Western mindset, we're going, well, just don't cook, just go eat out, blah, blah, blah. But what she's trying to tell you is that she feels trapped within what's expected of her and the role that she has to play as the matriarch and the responsibility that's been placed on her. And she doesn't know how to shift the perspectives. And it's a huge deal for her.
Yes.
And just understanding that in the dynamics of any culture. Yeah.
Yes. This is all very important. I would love to hear you talk a little bit about a shamanic approach to business, because we've talked about a lot of applications and ways of relating shamanically. And I think because business is really an archetypal model that is really built on the Industrial Revolution, and it's part of the real challenge. You talked about your corporate experiences and the healing and the process of getting out. If there's some things you can share about what you would advise business owners or people in businesses so that they could apply a shamanic concept or way of relating, what would you share?
First of all, there's a couple of different components that I would share. Recognize that your business is a team.
Mm-hmm.
And the team has to be cohesive and the team has energy. We just talked about how groups can come together and they can move mountains. Well, groups can come together and can be very, very dysfunctional. So
Mm-hmm.
applying a shamanic way to a team is really allowing somebody like myself or a person who has that spiritual foundation but works with teams to be able to come in, assess the dynamics of what's taking place with your team, and shift the energy. And when
Yes.
I talk about shifting the energy, we're talking about shifting the team dynamics with the individuals. We're talking
Yes.
about holding space. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about giving them different perspectives to realize that they don't have to be territorial, that they don't have to divide and outshine everybody else in order to be successful. So it's not just the teams too, it's also taking a look at the leadership and
Yeah.
how the leadership is. Because sometimes what happens is that business owners don't realize that they're setting the tone for toxicity. And therefore, what leadership is perpetuating out is what's impactful too. So it's really a twofold look at
Mm-hmm.
how the team is working, the dynamics of the team, how the cohesiveness is taking care of the teams. What are the team members' perspectives? I mean, we could deep dive into this.
Yeah.
Okay. And then knowing that if they're all held accountable and if they're all held to a code of conduct that shares that they're successful, that what they do is of value and they
Yes.
feel valued and they don't feel threatened, and you're going to find that your team can shift. But if you
Yes.
don't take time for those dynamics, those energies will definitely disrupt a very, very productive potentiality for a business.
Yes.
So businesses are engaging us. They're engaging us to work with their teams. They're engaging us to take a look. They're engaging us to look at their own style of leaderships. They're engaging us to even have the leadership do their own work. I work with corporate executives. I've worked with professionals, leaders in different respects. When you do your work, what you do amplifies down, how your
Yeah.
perspective amplifies.
Sure.
And then once you set that tone, and if you're setting that positive tone and your team's still not working um, well, then you can truly address the team. But
Mm.
it's being humble enough to say, I'm willing to look in the mirror and see what it looks like and
Yeah.
see what it is. So,
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot that can take place with teams. And I don't mean just small business either. I corporations, huge corporations, setting the
Mm-hmm.
tone, understanding what relays in toxicity, how you deliver a message, how
Yeah.
you deliver a message and the tonality and what you're saying and setting the stage for everyone makes a difference. It does.
Yes. Yeah. Very true. Our last stop on our journey today is the question, why aren't we creating our own paradigm shift? And you have the story of becoming a chef, or is it a chief?
We talked about chef because I gave you a beautiful example when we had first met about paradigm shifts.
Right.
And I love talking about this because the generations that are entering into the world are not the same generations that we were when we were
No.
coming in as kids, right? So the generation that's coming in is smart, they're
Mm-hmm.
intelligent, they are not apprehensive about themselves. They express a lot more freedoms than we ever did. They don't feel loyal to companies or things that are dysfunctional just for the sake of feeling loyal to them. So they're coming in and they're demanding what works for them.
Right.
And in understanding that when it doesn't work for them, they are more willing to create their own scenario for themselves that does work for them, then adhering and staying with the company that does. And I gave you the example of the fact that when you grow up and let's say you wanted to be a chef and going through the chef hierarchy, they are vindictive, they are egotistical, they are nasty. And so to be that head chef, you go through the iterations of all of this toxicity to be the person to do what? Recreate the toxicity.
Do it again.
Do it again, right? And I remember coaching someone, a beautiful woman, phenomenal chef. And she was like, I just can't stand it, how I'm being treated, belittled, demeaned, stepped on, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like, what stops you from creating your own family? What is it that you are afraid of to get over the hump to create your own family? And she's like, I'm not afraid of anything. And she's a successful restaurant owner, pop up. So she works when she chooses to, okay, for different events and everything else. And she created her own family, and they're a family. None of the belittling, demeaning, stepping on, egotistical attitudes are there. And when they do enter in, because somebody's so used to coming from that scenario, they either have that shift or they're let go. But what was beautiful is that she created her own paradigm shift within the restaurant business for herself as it pertains to how a chef behaves, how the top chef, lead chef, and the sous chef should behave.
Yes.
And it was beautiful. And I've seen that in so many different things in the world of entrepreneurialism. Because with corporations letting people go, people have to work. And so people are creating more and more and more of their own businesses. And as they create their businesses, they're asking, how do I establish that family? That we work cohesively together and that I can be conscious of the way that the environment is established and how productive we can be and taking the time to acknowledge how that environment is so that the person can be the best and do the best under the circumstances. So
Yeah.
it's really wonderful.
Yes. It is very, very important. I think it just takes the courage to ask yourself, do I want to be doing what everybody else is doing, or do I want to create something that, opens my heart,
Exactly.
fills my heart, and inspires
Yes.
me to be more each day? You were going to talk too about broken systems, such as the medical system. I think we have so many broken systems in every culture around the world, from government down. I'd love to hear your thoughts on a shamanic approach to broken systems.
Well, first of all, one of the things that we tend to do when we see broken systems is that we want to fix them, right? But a lot of our systems, if we do our due diligence, we're going to find are put in place hundreds and hundreds of years ago and under the auspices of not what's going on today.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the same as traditions, right? We talked about arranged marriages and things like that. And it's like, well, who does that today? Well, many people do that today. So some systems are intact because that's what was always in place. They've always done it that way, and it's never been looked at to do differently.
Right.
So I would say in applying the shamanic way, I would see the fact that we are creating new systems, a balance in how that system comes, because we talk about the new earth and the new age of paradigms and whatnot. And so I just talked about how the youth aren't loyal to the older systems. And if the loyalty is not there and the youth aren't filling them, then the systems are going to eventually break down and they're not going to exist because who's filling them? And they're creating their own. And so that shamanic approach is that I'm going to create my own system and I'm going to have a balance of the things that I like to do within that system. In the old days, you would never have social media. You're not allowed on the internet and whatnot. And the youth are coming in and basically saying, where's my social media account while I'm working? And where's my this and where's my that? And they balance it out and they get the work done And who's going to criticize that the work is getting done, that they're happy, that's quality work? You're doing what you need to do. So the demands are different. And when we look at the energy centers that lay the foundation for that, if it's not there, again, we have to step back and take a look at how can we make this function properly, and how can we create an energy that pushes forward and navigates in a more positive way, and typically in a newer system. you know
Yes.
I don't know that we need to just try to fix everything that's broken, because it's there's a lot of broken stuff out there. I think it's
Yeah.
more positioning, it's a better position to recreate, not even recreate, that's not the right word, to create something that truly, truly brings you joy. And I'm going to look at Google in a sense, how they basically said the workers are more productive when they get to work out. The workers are more
Hmm.
productive when they get to collaborate when they get to dress it the way they want to. All of
Yeah.
those things that, older traditional businesses wouldn't do. So they created their paradigm shift. I feel that more and more people, as they come, especially being entrepreneurial, they're going to basically say, this is what made me miserable. I don't want to
Yeah.
deal with that anymore. Here's how I'm going to create my workflow and what I built. And it's going to be creative, and it's going to come from their heart.
COVID was a very good example of that, because a lot of people left the corporate environment to work at home during the lockdowns. And I know many people that said to their bosses, I don't want to come back. I would rather work in my home. I'm
Hmm.
happier there. I can wear what I want. I can eat what I want. I just feel more productive. And I've known several people that I know in my personal circles who ended up downsizing their business because now they had all these empty offices, and it cut their overhead down, and their staff was more happy and probably more productive as well.
Right, right. You're absolutely right. And then also, it was a force of really engaging with your family, and really
Hmm.
just learning how to be productive and be at home and not away, and really engaging in the personalities that we have, because when we're absent from those things, we've forgotten how to socialize, we've
Yeah.
forgotten how to be patient, how to be tolerant. All of those practices came back into play, and I think we really wanted them, and we
Hmm.
missed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything you feel you'd like to share as we close, Enolia? I'd just love to give you the chance to just see what your heart wants to say as closing words.
I was sitting here thinking about what it is that I could share that would really, really be meaningful to people. And my thoughts are along the line of this. Let go and release the baggage.
Yeah.
Because when we call for gifts, when we're calling in our prayers, when we're calling through that beautiful place within us for gifts, remember that creator answers us not through materialism but through people.
Mm.
And that if you are so busy distracted by emotional distress, you may miss the gift that you called for. So take the time to really learn to come and be at peace and walk that path of life, aware of what's taking place around you, and engage those that want to seek you out, because they may be holding exactly what you prayed for. They may
Hmm.
be holding exactly what you asked for. We, as individuals, are the gifts.
Hmm.
Gifts happen through people, not through things.
Yes.
So again, remember that trauma, drama, they're a distraction from you seeing while you're walking the path, seeing the door open, seeing the person who wants to engage you and share with you and give you the gift that you've always been asking for.
Yeah, very important right there. Yeah. Yeah, it's people, not things. And
It
that's
is.
things, if you had all the things you wanted in the world but no people, you'd be desperately
Mhm.
alone and that things would have no meaning to you. I think that's a real important realization. Why don't you
And
share where people, oh, go ahead.
before we do that, and I also want to bring up, a lot of times thoughts will come to us to do things, right? So, Paul, you're in the grocery store and you go to say to that person, you know what, you look really beautiful today. And
Mm-hmm.
that thought just said, I need to tell her that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know that creator just worked through you to tell her that because she could be in such a bad place that you're not aware of, and you just saved her life.
Yeah.
That's the gift.
Yeah.
The fact
Yeah.
that what we say, what we do, what comes through us when we engage, when we trust ourselves to do, and it's like, oh, I don't know this person from anywhere. I can't say that. Yes, you can. You've been told and inspired to do it from a place so deep you don't know where it comes from. And you say it and you realize you're the gift. They were looking
Mm.
for a sign. They were looking for somebody or something to give them a sign to know that it's all right, or they're going to be okay, or come out of that bad place, or here's the thing you've been looking for, or here's the opportunity, or here's the connection. It all
Yeah.
happens with us through people and not through
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I've got two more things I'd like to cover. One is where can people reach you, find, excuse me, find your books or anything else you want to share. And then I've got a question I specifically would like to ask you to close the podcast. So why don't we get the information about where to reach you and anything else you think is important to share about books, workshops, anything you're offering. We are having the drumming workshop here at the Rainbow. I don't remember the specific dates. Do you happen to remember that? It'll be
Yeah,
in the information though.
yeah, it'll be in the information, but it's Memorial Weekend, and it's the
Oh, right.
Saturday
Yes.
and Sunday of Memorial Weekend in May. So hope that I will be
Mm.
flying out from Africa, and we're gonna do amazing things on your property. So I'm excited. I'm excited to visit.
I'm
And
excited for you to see our property
yes,
and be here.
yes,
It's very powerful here.
yes. And I can be reached at my website through my website. It has everything on there. www.enolia, enolia.live, live. So
Okay.
enolia.live. I have Facebook, um, I have Instagram, and I have LinkedIn. And I don't worry about it because there's not that many Enolias out there. So you'll easily be able to find me. Not
Yeah.
a problem at all. And offerings, I do offer my master class. I am offering some retreats. I'm taking a small group to Africa, to Egypt, and I'm taking a small group to Iceland. And Iceland's a healing trip, and Egypt's an expedition and ceremony.
Great.
So those couple of things are really what I'm offering right now. So now comes the
Fantastic.
question.
Well, the question is if you knew you were going to die tomorrow and you could use this moment to share a parting message with the people of the world, what would you like to share?
Mm, wow. If I knew I was going to die tomorrow, the parting message that I would like to share. Wow. Live life to your fullest. Trust what comes through you. Amplify that which you know to be divine,
Mm.
and always be the beacon of light that you are within your heart.
Yeah, that's great. That right there could heal the world if it was practiced. Mhm.
So I think it would be along those lines. Because if we did that with one another, if we did that for ourselves, then nobody would have to worry about our interaction with each other because
Yes.
we would be right aligned within our hearts with Creator as
Mm.
individuals. So then coming together is the contribution to the world.
Yes. Thank you very much for sharing that. Well, Enolia, what a beautiful podcast. I really enjoyed the journey with you, and the stories were phenomenal. And I felt like I got to experience your own evolution and go for a ride with you. And I feel this deeper sense of connection to you. So when you come, I can see now why Angie gets so excited when she talks about you and her time with you, because, Angie really does her best to live these things you've been talking about. And I think, from being with her, she has her own magic as well.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. I'm excited to be doing the drum making workshop with her. So yes, absolutely.
I'm excited for you to meet Penny too, because
yes.
Penny's very powerful as well.
Yes.
These two women together are quite a powerful experience for anybody.
Absolutely. Penny and I both have that beautiful elder streak going through our hair. It was like, oh, we have matching streaks. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you. I just want to close by saying thank you to all of you for listening, and I hope you feel inspired to put into practice as much as you can of what Enolia shared today. And I think we all have just this great opportunity right now to be the change the world needs right now. And in so doing, we become more whole in ourselves first, and that makes a guarantee that the world has changed. And I'd like to say thank you to my amazing sponsors for all your beautiful products. And like all of you to know, anytime you buy from the sponsors, you're supporting very ethical companies that support biodynamic farmers, organic farmers, free range farming, and protect our soil. And you're really creating the loop that is the wheel of life by spending money with the sponsors and supporting your own health and your own children. So thank you to all my sponsors. And I look forward to sharing something amazing with you. It's going to be hard to top Enolia, but I don't need to top it, because you can come right here to the rainbow and get right next to her and feel it pouring out of her, and she will shift you into a higher state of your authentic self by just being with her, as I'm sure you've experienced today. I know there was times throughout the podcast where I just had tears wanting to come out of my eyes, and I thought, I got to control this so I don't distract Enolia. But thank you, Enolia, for all your love and all your presence. It's really a beautiful experience to be with someone who's so truly themselves, and I'm grateful that you're in the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for honoring me, for being here. So grateful, Paul. So grateful to you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of love to all of you. See you in a week with something amazing and exciting. Aho, Great Spirit. It is done. It is done. It is done. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Dr. Enolia Foti. You can join Enolia, Paul, and Angie Chek at their upcoming workshops in Southern California on May 24th and 25th. On Saturday 24th, Angie and Enolia will guide you through the process of making your own shamanic drum to take home with you. On Sunday 25th, Paul, Angie, and Enolia will teach you how to play a drum in a shamanic way. You can attend one or both days and learn how drum medicine can enhance, honor, and bless the drummer, the listeners, and the surroundings. For more information and to register, go to paulchek.com/events/drum-workshop. That's paulchek.com/events/drum-workshop. You can visit Enolia's website at enolia.live. That's ENOLIA.live to find out more about her retreats, masterclasses, energy sessions, mentorship opportunities, and her books. Connect with her on Facebook at facebook.com/ctw.ojibwe and on Instagram at Enolia Empowers. Enolia also invites Spirit Gym with Paul Chek listeners to her complimentary session, Infinite Possibilities, Meditation 1, Speak to Your Higher Self, which is available on YouTube at bit.ly/Enolia on Spirit Gym. That's bit.ly/Enolia on Spirit Gym. If you are looking for a community where you can share ideas and ask questions about topics discussed in this podcast, then check out Paul's Spirit Gym program and community. Memberships start at less than $8 a month, and you can get access to exclusive members-only opportunities from Paul's guests, live Q&A sessions with Paul and his guests, access to the podcast members forum within the Spirit Gym community where you can interact with other passionate listeners, and the chance to purchase exclusive Spirit Gym merchandise. You can subscribe today by going to paulchek.com/podcast or explore the higher levels of membership at myspiritgym.com. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.